If you've ever experienced Splash Mountain at Disneyland, then you understand acceleration, right? How many of you have ever been on Splash Mountain in Disneyland? Okay, I was hoping a few of you might be. Well, think about if you were on the top of Splash Mountain. You know that feeling when you're kind of rising to the top, and you know that you're now committed, right? Whether you like or don't like roller coasters, you know you're committed when you get to the top. And this is the cool part. That's the splash, right? So you're all up here, you're committed, and you're about ready to go down. What would happen if this part no longer existed?
I would not be going.
But you don't know, you've committed. You've committed, you're standing up there, or you're not standing, you're sitting in there, and you don't know, you get up here, all of a sudden that's gone. What happens?
Depends how fast you go.
Well, this looks like it's going pretty fast. You start going down.
We're at Harborview.
You're at Harborview. You have a huge chasm, right? You have a huge chasm there. Well, what I would say to each one of you who are especially in the professional services and consulting world, this is what many of us, and I can speak from experience, it's what many of us have done with our businesses. We have, and I'm going to hand this out in just a second, we have a whole lot of things that are free or very low cost we make available. And then we have a whole bunch of things that cost quite a bit more money, consulting and coaching. But if you have somebody that you meet at some point, a prospect, who has found you to be an object of interest, they find that you might be able to help them, and you agree. However, this isn't quite good enough for them. It doesn't give them everything they want. It certainly doesn't give you everything you need. And this might just be a little bit outside of their budget or what they're trying to accomplish. And so what happens to them? Okay, this is the interactive part of today's session. Okay. They go away, right? They go away. And so what we're trying to do is to try to help you understand, number one, what the heck is an accelerant curve? You're going to take a look at is a curve that looks something like this. And what the visual will show you is that on this side, and I'll put this back in so we don't end up in Harborview. This side is ease of entry. This side is ease of entry, and this is the easier the entry. This side is intimacy and fees. So in other words, what you have up here is you may have a newsletter. Your newsletter is free probably. Or at least what I've seen, most people have a fairly generic, decent newsletter. It's free. There is very little intimacy, right, in a newsletter. And there's no fee. What you have down here at the end, a lot of you do consulting and coaching. There's a lot more intimacy, isn't there? Harder to get into because it costs more. A lot harder to get into, but you have increased intimacy and increased fee. And what I, again, mentioned to you is I find a lot of folks don't have some of the things in the middle. And I bet when I was hearing people say, well, I have 2 or 3, I bet you have more, and if you don't, we're going to make sure you walk away with that today. Is this my video?
Yes.
I have Alan Weiss, because he can explain it much better than me to start with, and so I'd like to hear Alan Weiss talk about it.
I'm Alan Weiss, and this is the writing on the wall.
Okay, so how does it apply to you? I'll talk about first how it applies to me, and how I'm a perfect example of the accelerant curve in Alan's world. I started my practice in 2005, and my first mentor is a guy by the name of Scott Simmons. Jim, do you mind putting the lights up? I'm not going to. My first mentor was a guy by the name of Scott Simmons. He is an insurance consultant in Maine. And he said the first thing you have to do is you have to find out who Alan Weiss is. I'd never heard of Alan Weiss. And so I started reading his newsletter, Started watching his blogs, watching his videos, getting some of the small booklets he had, getting a couple of his proposal books, $1 Million Consulting, things like that. Well, for a few years, that's all I did. I was way over on this side. And at some point in 2008, I was not doing what I wanted to do in business. And I thought, okay, now I've got to get serious. So I contacted a friend of mine who had just gotten into his $1 Million Hall of Fame, a gal by the name of Libby Wagner. I don't know if some of you know Libby. And she, in no uncertain terms, said, you need to be in his mentor program. And so I do what Libby tells me. And that's on video, so I better show Libby this. She'll know I said that. But I joined his mentor program and went somewhere into here. Well, from that, I started accelerating. I started taking a few of his workshops. I went to his $1 Million Consulting College. And the next thing you know, I'm in his Master Mentor program and Alan and the gang. And so all of a sudden, I went from here, and even though it took a little bit of time with the trust in the brand, I started accelerating until I'm in some of his vault business. And I realize as I start doing my own Accelerant Curve, I've got to do the same thing. And that's how it applies to you. You can do the same thing as well. So my question for you before we get into the exercise is think a little bit about this. Where are your chasms? Where do you see some holes in, he talked about the cliff. I guess I'm talking about Splash Mountain. In your roller coaster, where are some of the weak links? And in doing that, how many prospects might you be losing every month and every year? Because you don't have a place to have them drop in. If you only have this and this, you'll lose a lot.